Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Friday's webinar from Annika Digital. It's myself and Stanley today, and Katie. We're the hosts.
Everyone.
And Emil is going to be actually presenting. So say hi, Emil.
Hello, everyone.
So Emil's going to be doing an introduction to social media tracking, and his main focus is Facebook. And the reason for that is that what happens in Facebook usually is copied by the rest of the platforms, and really how to make sure that if you use that social media tracking, you can improve the performance of your social media ads. Now, while we wait for a few more people to join, what we're going to do first of all is we're going to do a poll. Because this is being recorded, I will read out the answers, and then I'll do a couple of the introduction slides on Annika, because we are celebrating our 15th birthday in 1 week's time. So that's very exciting. And then hand over to Emil, and then myself and Katie will reappear about 5-2. Just for the people that aren't used to, this is the first time. I know we get a lot of new people join in. Please say hi in the chat. Lots of familiar faces in the chat. And you can also go and grab the handout top right. So you can go and download the slides in the PDF version. Okay, so let's get going then. So let's do the poll. So I'm going to start polling now. Can you see it, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Are you using social media advertising and tracking through to conversion? Yes, I'm using both social media and tracking. Yes, I'm using social media but not tracking activity. No, I'm not using social media and wish to learn more. This is social media ads mainly, but obviously having the pixel can be useful for other things. We'll talk about pixels in a minute. No, but I'm going to get a budget together and wish to get going soon. No, because I'm scared of tracking. Not right now. I'm total beginner. So let's see what people are saying. So yes, I'm using both social media and tracking. That's at the moment, that's nearly 50%. Well, that's a real surprise, which is really good news, because there may be some elements of tracking that you're not using. Oh, that's going down a bit, Emil. The next most popular one is I'm using social media but not tracking activity. Which I guess is not really surprising. So those are the really the major ones. So I think that's quite useful for Emil to know. So let's just give you a little bit of housekeeping. So I'll reappear, and I've got a couple of things to share with you at the end. The video will be available in a couple of hours, and we'll email it to you directly. So I think that's everything on that from me. Let's just go. Would you like to just go through what you're going to cover, Emil, and then I'll do the Annika slide, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. So first, I'll just give you a brief introduction to tracking, just explain a little bit about what it actually is, the basis of it. And I'll go through a couple of types of tracking. I'll look at Attribution Windows, which is something that is something that I probably only in the last sort of like year and a half is something that I started to really look at and understand the relevance of, and then how to utilize it. So tracking is not just about seeing your results. Okay, that's the result. That's done with that. It's also about what you can do with it and using it to your advantage. And so I'll look at how that works for remarketing, building audiences, and obviously optimizing your campaigns, because ultimately if you've got better vision, then you can make better decisions and optimize your campaigns and get the most out of your budgets. I'll also look at a bit of a controversial one in the digital marketing industry, so Google Analytics versus in-platform analytics. So by in-platform, I mean things like the Facebook Ads Manager stats and LinkedIn Ads Manager as well. And then I'll show you an example I came up with that sort of just breaks it down quite simply, as that's going to be especially useful for the beginners here, so you can understand what you're missing out on by not having tracking and the sort of mistakes that you're likely to be making because you can't see what's happening.
Excellent, thank you, Emil. And I think really that's the key to it, is how you use the tracking rather than just the process of setting it up. But unless you know how to set it up properly, you can't get the benefits of it. And that's why a lot of people try social media ads. And I think one of your comments, Emil, was it's not really surprising they give up because they don't know if it's working or not. Okay, so I'll just go a little bit about Annika. As I said, it's our 15th birthday in a week's time. So it's amazing to think that there's not that many digital agencies that are over about 6 years old. Most of them have been formed in the last 5 years. So we've been around. I've actually been in the industry 20 years this year, which is even more scary. And we work with a range of different types of clients, and these are a few of them in here. We really specialize in things like the construction industry, B2B, science and technology, manufacturing, medical health and science. But we also do a lot of work with local companies. We're doing a lot of training. We're working with the councils. We're working with the universities. So we do have these sort of 4 core areas that we do specialize in. And there's now a team of 27 at Annika. And we have about 45 clients. So we have lots of bigger clients, not hundreds of smaller clients. I think that's really all I wanted to say on Annika today. We do these webinars every week, and you're welcome to go. And there's a link at the end where you can get a lot of the old ones. So please go and help yourself. So I think it's over to you. So I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'll be helping answer the questions. So I'll see you about 5:02. Bye, Emil.
Cool, see you then. So just a little bit about me to start off with. So I'm a very recent paid media account director at Annika. That's my title since the 1st of Jan. I specialize in the paid social media side, so I don't do any PPC or anything like that. It's all social media. So that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest. They're probably the 4 main ones at the moment. And then always want to learn about the new ones as well, so the TikToks and that sort of thing. But it's not something that I've actually had a client advertise for so far. But beyond that, my background's in PR, where I did also do some social media work. So a lot of this is about looking back at me during those days when I was a newbie, working on social media and not really having a full understanding. It was very much get the ads out there and then just look at the stats that were available, but not knowing that you could go way beyond that and the accuracy that you could get from the ads. I've worked with everything from startups to multi-billion-pound annual turnover companies. So there's a wide range there, and they all bring completely different challenges in terms of what you need to achieve. I love everything from the creative side. I've got a good creative eye. So if you were on the last webinar with Tom, me and him, we match very well in our vision on how to optimize the visual side. But I also love the analytics and the evaluation and making decisions. I think it goes back to many, many years of playing Football Manager, where it was all stat-based, and who knew that was going to actually turn into an advantage during my career. I'm from Norway, born and raised, been in England for about half my life. I've lost the accent, started off American and then ended up like this. And yeah, I dabble in football, and by that I mean I'm pretty football obsessed. I don't have many football examples in this one, but the one that I did last year was all about sports marketing, which is my university degree is in sports marketing. So yeah, there's I had to add the picture as well just to really emphasize that point. So let's get started. So why is tracking important? So tracking is one of the core advantages of digital marketing. It gives you vision of your ad performance that traditional methods have struggled with. So some of the examples I'll be using here, I use them as an exaggerated example. So here I've used tracking the success of a physical newspaper ad or an article, getting the impact of that in terms of precise figures is very, very difficult. You might go on your website and you might see a spike there and you think that might have been because of that article, or maybe something else happened. So it's a bit of guesswork when it comes to digital marketing. You can actually track those results much more accurately and then make your decisions on where to spend your money accordingly. Without tracking, you're essentially working half blindly on social media. You'll get some stats, but the key stats when it comes to the conversion side, so conversions is the term that we use for things like a sale or a lead, or whatever key action that you want people at the end goal, essentially, is a conversion. So you can, like I said, you can advertise without the tracking, but it leaves you with one eye, essentially. So I try to break this down into a real world example. So if you imagine you're standing around the corner from your shop and you're talking to people about your shop and you're trying to physically advertise it. What you can do with without the tracking is that you obviously know how many people you spoke to. You can see if they made the turn to go down the corner to where your shop is. But beyond that, you don't know what they did after that. You don't know if they actually just went straight on and continued down that road. You don't know if they actually visited your shop. And then you don't know if they bought anything. But tracking allows you to see all of that second part. So where do we use tracking? You can use it for ad testing, more accurate on that front as well. So you can actually test where the results are coming from instead of just what I call the vanity stats, like the impressions and the clicks. Clicks on Facebook, for example, includes any click. It could be someone who enlarged the image, someone who went to look at the comments. It doesn't mean a click going to your website. So I classify them as vanity stats. You can also use it for audience building. If you can track people going to your website, then you can create audiences based on what they're doing there. You can then test those audiences. Remarketing, which is something that I'm going to expand on later on. And then from those audiences, you can create lookalike audiences. Lookalike audiences is not something I'm going to cover, but essentially it's social media platforms. If you give them a source of an audience, whether that's a database or whether it's an audience from your website, for example, what you can do is create a lookalike, which is essentially an audience that where the platforms try to find as many people that are similar to those as possible. And then you can set up the conversion-based campaigns, which you can't really do if you don't have the tracking. So types of tracking. There are a couple of different types of tracking that I'm going to cover here. The first of them is UTM tracking. So UTM tracking is essentially a bit of code at the end of your URL that allows you to identify your traffic through analytics platforms like Google Analytics. So if you have your URL, so annika.co.uk, if you want to track that, at the end of that, you can add some code so that when you go on analytics, you can see where that traffic came from. So instead of just simply saying, instead of analytics not being able to identify it, or they possibly could identify some of it, all of a sudden you're able to see where it came from. The most commonly used ones are called source and medium. So the source will be, for example, the platform, and then the medium, we tend to classify that as the type of traffic. So for the advertising side, we go for paid. If you're doing organic, then it will be organic. But then beyond that, you can drill down further to see how your specific campaigns are doing. So you could add campaign data and content data as well. to that code, which means that you can drill down and see what analytics is saying compared to what your in-platform analytics is saying, and then compare those stats. Now, I realized for the beginners that might have sounded like complete Chinese, but it's not as complicated as it may sound on the surface. And you can build a code at the end of your URL through loads of free tools on Google. We have on ourselves on our website that you can find through this URL here. And essentially what you do is just you type in your URL. So in this case, we've used the A10 marketing framework. Then you type in your source, Facebook, medium, paid, and then we've used campaign name as well. And then you just click generate URL, and then your original URL turns from this to that with the code, and then you can add that to your ads, or add it to. You can do this for organic posts as well. I recommend doing that if you're doing organic social, having say Facebook organic at the end, just so you know that it's coming from organic, because a lot of the time what happens on Facebook, if you don't have the tracking on organic, is that it might classify it as referral, but quite a bit of paid traffic also is classified as referral. So you want to distinguish them as much as possible, so you know how well your organic is working as well. And then we go on to the real reason why we're here, which is more the website pixels for tracking. So what is a tracking pixel? A pixel is essentially a connector between the website and your social media platform. So it's actually a bit of code that sits on your website that sends information between the two. You'll need to add one for each different platform. So there's not, you just have one pixel and that works for Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google. So you have different ones for each. So essentially it allows you to track actions on your website and conversion, so you get more precise data. This could be page views, button clicks, leads, thank you pages, if you have a form. So essentially, without the tracking pixel, you're running your ads blindly, and you have very little to learn from. You can only learn from impressions and clicks, really. There are a couple of other stats that you can look at, but they're probably like the main ones that you'll be able to see. But you won't see anything beyond that. So what that also means is that the ad platforms, they can't see that either, so they don't know what people to look for. So if the end goal for you is to generate sales, but you don't have tracking installed, then the ads can only, or the ad platforms can only really look at the stats available. So they might look at impressions, or they might look at clicks, but that doesn't, the people that you manage to reach, or the ads that manage to reach a lot of people, might not have generated any sales. So you're not helping the social media platforms either if you're not giving them the data that they need to optimize automatically. And what happens is that a lot of companies, they do run social media ads without the tracking installed, and they jump to a conclusion that it's not working. But it's not necessarily that it's not working, it's that you just gave it a very, very poor chance of working to start off with, and you've never really been able to see the real performance. So there are different pixels for different platforms. Facebook pixel, it's LinkedIn Insight tag. That's the name of the LinkedIn one. So if you ever hear that, it's essentially the pixel. Pinterest tag, and then we've got Twitter pixel as well. They're also used for other platforms. So Google uses analytics pixel. Like I mentioned, I don't dabble into the PPC side, so I don't really know much about that. So please no questions there. And then Bing apparently uses universal event tracking. So how do you install your pixel? So I'm using Facebook here as the main example throughout, just because if I went into detail on all of them, then we'd be here all day. But Facebook, they make it very easy to install a pixel using something called partner integration. So I've included a list of partners that you can use, and they have partner. You do this through Facebook. The partnership is set up, so they've worked hard, both these partners and Facebook, in order to make this as smooth as possible. And essentially what it does, it does a lot of the legwork for you, so you don't have to do anything manually. But you can also install the code on your website by giving it to your developer, or you can use tools like Google Tag Manager. I definitely recommend that you get a professional to do this, because I've seen time and time again that companies have tried to do it, or individuals have tried to do it either because they want to save a bit of money, or they just feel like they know what they're doing, but they've never touched upon any of this. So what happens is that they then come to an agency, and we go on the pixel and everything's a right shambles, and we need to just rip everything out and start from scratch, and it becomes an absolute nightmare, and it adds time, and in the long run you end up spending more than you would have. So what can you track through the pixel? So the benefit of the partner integration is that if you've got everything set up correctly elsewhere, the majority of especially e-commerce events, they'll be added automatically. So on the right here, this list here these are mainly events that were added automatically through partner integration. So purchase events, add to cart, initiate checkouts, and view content, so someone viewed a product. You can also use custom events. These are events that you can set up yourself that might be something like clicks on specific buttons, so you can select those yourself, or you could have submit buttons as well, and then you can go to thank you pages, and thank you pages tend to be the most accurate. I always push for clients, if they have a form on the website, I push for them to add a thank you page instead of just a submit where the URL doesn't change at all. I'll move on to why that is the preferred option in a bit. So yeah, custom events can be set up to track thank you pages that are unique to your site. So ideally, if you have forms that you want to track specifically, then you want a different thank you page for each of them. Say, for example, it's not the same if someone requests a brochure through a form as someone who is requesting a quote. So you don't want to have the same thank you page for both of those. You want them to be separate, and then you can optimize your ads for those specific thank you pages as well. The difference between the submit button and the thank you page, the main thing is that it's a lot easier to get duplicate events if you're doing a submit button. So if you think about the times that you filled in a form in the past, the amount of times where you might have missed out a section, or you might have misspelled something, so you end up clicking submit more than once. The problem with button clicks is that often that will count as duplicates, whereas there's less chance of that happening if you have a thank you page, and that's why we really try to push for that. And then what happens as well when you have custom events, you can create really advanced targeting strategies where we use the tracked events based on what actions were taken. So if you're tracking different types of pages, landing pages, for example, then you can then build audiences based on people that visited those pages, and then you can then cater your ads specifically for the people that have visited that specific page. It just helps you trickle the audience down the marketing funnel, if you like, in an effective way, because you'd probably start off with a more generic message, but then now you know these people have visited that page specifically. So now let's target them with this message. Now they're at this page, which is a step further down, then they need to be targeted with a more aggressive conversion message. So moving on to attribution windows. So like I mentioned at the beginning, attribution windows is something that I didn't really pay that much attention to until quite recently. So probably like the last year and a half. And some of the main reasons for that was because of changes that were made through the new Apple privacy rules. So social media attribution window is essentially a window that they credit your events to. So within this window, if an action has been taken, we will credit the sale to the ads. So that could be a sale or a lead or any other conversion. Facebook's default attribution window now is called 7-day click, 1-day view. Essentially what that means is that if anyone has clicked an ad within 7 days prior to a purchase or viewed it on the day of purchase, then they will credit that sale to Facebook. So if someone, say if I was on Facebook 6 days ago, I clicked an ad, I bought it today, but maybe I went directly to the website, because it's in that 7-day window, Facebook will say, we're going to take credit for that sale. Now, the windows, they can vary in sizes as well. And obviously, the bigger the window, the more sales you're going to get credited. But you need to be a bit critical as well when you're choosing these windows. You can't just say, I'm just going to choose the biggest window because then I get the most sales attributed, because you need to be quite fair. And as an agency as well, we need to be fair to the client. We can't just take credit for ridiculous windows. Like, for example, a 60-day Pinterest, they offer some extremely big windows. But if we took credit for any sale within 60 days of just viewing an ad, then all of a sudden we'd go to the client with astronomical figures and say, look how great these ads are. But in reality, if we turn the ads off, there's not going to be anywhere near that many sales missing. So you do need to be critical on that side. In the past, Facebook's default attribution window, so up until I think it was February, it was actually 28-day click, 1-day view. But I know January, I've even got it in here, already done the research but forgot it. But yeah, the privacy changes basically meant that after the 7 days, there was a lot less information coming through after the 7 days, so they decided to move it down to 7 days. So now you can't go beyond 7 days on Facebook. That's the maximum click attribution you can have. So essentially, it means if someone clicked an ad 8 days before purchase, Facebook won't take credit for it. Now, when it comes to the windows, one thing that is quite important is looking at the types of service or product that you're selling. So say, for example, you're selling a product that's a quick sell, something that doesn't require a lot of consideration. So say, for example, I'm going to use, it's a stupid example, but say you're advertising milk. It's something that you don't need to consider it. Do you need it now? Yeah, I need it tomorrow. You just buy it there and then. But then, so that won't be affected much by these windows, because that should always be within that 7-day, 1-day window. But think about a piece of furniture that costs £5,000. You're not going to buy that on the spot. It's not an instant purchase. So you're most likely going to have a much more complex buying process there. You'll probably take a few months to look around and compare, because you want the absolute best on that front. So the Apple tracking transparency, like like I mentioned earlier, essentially what Facebook sent out a message at the time is that they'll enforce their app tracking transparency. If you've got an iPhone, it's the message when you download a new app. The first time you open it, it will say something like, will you allow us to track you on other apps? And you say yes or no. And what at the time they predicted about 80% of people are going to say no, if not more. I've not read up on what the actual stats have been since then, but yeah, essentially it means that there are limitations on data sharing. So there's less data, which it's a nightmare for us in social media advertising. But yeah, they're trying their best to recuperate by introducing different things. And I'm not going to go that much into depth, but they've introduced things like aggregated events, something that you can, if you're a little bit more advanced, you should probably Google aggregated events because that is a quite important thing as well. So attribution window optimization. This is when I really started to understand how important it is to wrap your head around attribution windows. You can, on Facebook, for example, even though the default window is 7 day, one day, you can choose other types of windows to optimize for. And what I've found in the last 6-ish months is that if I, especially for conversion campaigns, if I optimize for 7 day click only without the 1 day view, my ads started to perform better. So essentially, even though it's their default window, so essentially what they recommend, they were almost punishing ads that were, or ad sets that were optimized to 1 day view as well. So it's something to definitely test out. But in order to see the results of 7 day view, 7 day click, 1 day view, even though you optimize for 7 day click only, you need to have something like Data Studio when you can see those stats, because on the surface in Facebook, the stats are going to look lower because you're comparing it to a different window. I know I'm going quite advanced here and some people's brains are probably melting at this point, but it's difficult to keep it that straightforward. Other platforms, like I mentioned, Pinterest, they've got some huge attribution windows and they don't even allow you to remove the 1 day view attribution. So even though the other platforms will have been affected by Apple as well, it's Facebook that's really been pushing and been really against it, and they've been trying to make the bigger changes. And I'm sure the others eventually will they'll follow suit. And yeah, just the last point as well. It kind of relates to my first point where I've seen that the ads perform better if I go to 7 day click. But if you think about a click attribution and a view attribution, if someone has actually clicked on your ad to go to your website at some point in the last 7 days and then bought something, that to me is a more valuable action than someone who's just viewed the ad. So it's come up on their stream and they've seen it for 3 seconds because they might not even have clicked it. So to me, I always, if you've got a good click attribution, it means your ads are performing better than if you're getting a lot of view only attribution. Right, so the controversial topic, Google Analytics versus in-platform. There's a lot of debate on this topic in digital marketing. It's probably because PPC people have been from day one. They've sort of grown up with Google and everything Google. Obviously, if we're talking about Google Ads and Google Analytics, they're obviously going to have a strong relationship there. And what happens is that a lot of the time, people would just dismiss in-platform analytics as irrelevant. But when we look at everything in depth, it's not that simple. It's not one is right and one is wrong. It's not social media professionals versus PPC professionals. The best way of looking at it is that one is probably going to favor some types of ads, and the other, the in-platform, is going to favor and try to take a bit more credit for the social media ads. But the best point is to look in the middle and having a look at different trends on each platform, and then forming a middle ground and making decisions based on both of them joined together. So you shouldn't be overly reliant on Google Analytics, and you shouldn't be overly reliant on the in-platform analytics. You need to look at more than one source. When it comes to a purchase journey, especially when I mentioned the more expensive product, it's not a very simple conversion journey. There's so many different touch points on that journey, and it makes it extremely difficult to say which one actually deserves the credit for it. So I'm going to run through an example of how complicated that could be in a bit. But say, for example, someone's clicked on a Facebook ad within the week, and Facebook takes that as a sale. But then Google Analytics might give that sale to PPC because that's where the last click came from. So say, for example, they first clicked, they never knew about the product until they saw the Facebook ad and clicked it. So that was 6 days ago. Then it took 6 days, and then they went on Google and they clicked a PPC ad, and then they purchased it. Without the Facebook ad, they never would have gone on the PPC ad. But then, would they have purchased it if the PPC ad wasn't there, or would they have gone to a competitor? So in reality, both of them deserve credit. So neither is right or wrong. Analytics isn't wrong for giving credit to the PPC ad, and Facebook isn't right for giving credit to the Facebook ads, because they were both relevant parts of that purchase journey. And that's why you need to look at both of them. So I've got this quite an example purchase journey here of how that might look for a product that needs a little bit more consideration. Or a service, of course. So it starts off, say, for example, someone clicks on a Facebook ad. So they go to the website, they view the product, they take note of it, and then they leave because maybe they didn't have time to purchase then, maybe it was too expensive, they need to do a bit more research. Then the next stage is that we've now got tracking installed, and we've set up remarketing. So we can now track the people that view that specific product and then remarket them with it. But this time they see the ad, but they only view it. They don't actually click on it. Instead, they Google it because they think, actually, I'm going to have a look at other people. Other products or services that are similar. So they Google it, and then they click on the shopping ad that the same company is running. They visit the website, and they're actually thinking they're a bit closer to purchase now. They add it to cart, but then maybe something comes up, so they leave again. We then have another type of ad, which is called abandoned cart ads. An abandoned cart ad is specific ads for people that have added to cart but not purchased. It's something that is very regular in marketing, and they're very aggressive ads. We're just trying to push them over the line. But again, they don't click the abandoned cart ad. They're now so familiar with the company because they've clicked on one ad, they've been on the website, they've viewed another ad, they've been on the website twice. So they actually just type in the URL directly, and then they purchase. So what we might see on Google Analytics then is that was a direct purchase, because the only time they interacted with the Facebook ads to them, they're not able to track the view ads because it was all viewed the last 2 times they saw the ads, but the person actually typed in the URL directly, so they're classifying that as a direct sale, and Facebook gets 0 credit for that one. But what Facebook will show you is that the abandoned cart actually was shown just before they typed in the URL. So they've got that in a one-day view attribution window. So Facebook will show that the purchase actually came from one of the ads. So that's why you can't be too reliant on Google Analytics here, because from Analytics, you would have just said Facebook didn't do anything. But in reality, it actually did. There were 3 ads that actually impacted that purchase journey very heavily. So moving on to how you can utilize the tracking. I did touch upon remarketing before, and this chart sort of helps to explain what remarketing is as well, if you're unfamiliar with that. So in the user journey earlier on, it was a user, they went to the website, then they left, and then they saw another ad, and then they went back to the website, and then what you hope is that they convert the second time or the third time. Without the tracking, remarketing capabilities are really limited. So if you want a smoother remarketing audience, then you should have the tracking installed. When it comes to things like abandoned cart and how important that can be, I don't actually have the source here, but I read a stat that 26% of people who abandon cart actually go on to purchase elsewhere. So you've done so well and got them so far. They were so close to buying from you, but in the end, they actually purchased elsewhere. But with abandoned cart ads, you're going to take a large chunk of, you're going to win a big chunk of those 26% back again. And what often happens is we have clients and they say, well, that's an abandoned cart ad, so they were going to purchase anyway. But this stat really highlights how dangerous it is to be complacent on that front and how important remarketing can be. When it comes to the cost per acquisition, so that is cost per sale, cost per lead, remarketing campaigns tend to have a much lower CPA, basically because they're a lot lower down in the marketing funnel. So you are essentially just giving them the last push. Audience building, touched upon this a few times throughout, but if you can track people on your website, then you can also build audiences based on that. So you can build audiences on someone who's just been to your website, any page. You can do specific pages. So you can add in the precise URL. You can do multiple URLs. So say, for example, you're selling a type of product. You just want anyone who's been to those category pages, or maybe there's 3 different pages that you find key to the content that you're putting out in your new ads. So then you can then cater that content for the audiences, and you should cater the content as well, because if they've already been on your website and they've been to relevant pages, then they are very likely to be lower down the funnel. So you shouldn't be marketing them with the same message as someone who's never heard of you, because they're at completely different need states. And then we have optimizing, which is possibly the most important part of it. If you have tracking in place, you've got more data uncovered. So that enables you to make better decisions. So you can optimize your campaigns in a much more effective way because you're able to see everything. You can then see what's really working and not just what could be working. Because without the tracking, there's a lot of guesswork going on. And you'll often make the wrong decisions based on those guesses, because you're just basing it on high-level stats instead of the key stats that you really want people. You want people to take action. You don't just want them to see, unless you're running awareness ads, but say we're talking about conversion ads. You really want them to take action. You don't want them to just see an ad and then nothing else happens. Long term, if you can see the key stats, then you can obviously start to see trends, and you can start to measure ad sets and audiences against each other, and then you can improve your creative. You can see this type of creative works really well because we're getting X amount of sales. We're not getting any sales from this type of creative, So going forward, let's make more of this type. Same with the audiences. This audience doesn't seem to be generating any sales. This audience is. Let's put more budget into those audiences and try to build similar ones. You can then run effective tests as well. And essentially, you can spend your budget where you're actually getting the results, which is absolutely key. So I've created a quite basic example of how the journey might look if you have the tracking installed and if you don't have it. So for this webinar, say for example, we were to run 2 ads and sign-ups, they're conversion ads, sign-up is the main goal. Without tracking, we'll be able to, we're going to assume that they spent the exact same, they have the same budget. So without tracking, what we're seeing is ad number 1 had 8,000 impressions, ad number 2 had 12,000. The cost per click for ad 1 was £1 and for ad 2 was 50p. On the surface, what we're seeing here is that ad 2 outperformed ad 1. With tracking, what we might see are stats like this. We might see that there were actually no signups for ad number 2. So even though there were less impressions and the cost per click was higher, people from ad 1, they were actually signing up. So we were getting a cost per lead of £10, but we were getting absolutely nothing from ad 2. Why was that? That could be something as simple as Facebook managed to find the people that were signing up and then went to look for more of them. But because those people were taking action, they are more expensive to reach. So just because the vanity stats here show that you're getting more clicks, you're actually getting more irrelevant clicks. That's what's happening. And you're always going to want to, you're always happy to pay more if people are actually taking action instead of doing nothing, because all these people where they might have, who knows why they clicked, but they turned out to be completely irrelevant people. Over repetition there. So yeah, just went over this. You would have, the decision that you might have made here, just looking at those stats, is that you might have paused ad 1 because this is all you saw. Or you might have just lumped double the budget on, gone £300 in the next phase and £100 on ad 1. But like we saw when we had the full stats, is that would have been the completely wrong decision, because if we look at the key stats, ad 2 is the one that should be paused because it's being outperformed massively. Yeah, without the tracking, you're not seeing that key data when it comes to conversions, and that's why it's so essential to have it installed, because you will be making mistakes like the one in the example here based on those higher level stats. I think some of these ads have just been added in a bit after I completed the presentation, so that's just repetition. But yes, that is it from me. So I think Anne's going to be joining.
Can you hear me, Emil?
Cheers.
Excellent. So we've had a really interesting chat. Let's do some questions and answers, and then we can.
And your microphone's gone a bit Dalek-like. Sorry. I don't know what happened then.
Can you hear? Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah, it's still a bit crackly. It's not as bad.
Okay, sorry. I've got a bit of a problem with my computer. I've had to load a new computer, so borrow a new computer. So there's been lots of really interesting questions. Let me try the other one. Hold on.
I wonder if you need to mute one and then use the other. Maybe that's what's interfering with one another.
I can start answering some of the questions from the Q&A anyway.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Can you hear me now?
Ross,
yeah, that's better. That's fine.
Okay. So
Emil and I take over, Anne.
Okay.
So there's been a few questions. We've been answering loads along the way. Mark's saying, can I recommend someone for your future webinar as well? You run as well?
What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to, while I try and sort out the sound situation, what I wanted to say was there was lots of questions about, so I've had to turn my camera off, but can you hear me?
It's fine now, 100%
okay,
fine.
Cool. Yeah, it's because I had two laptops open. One, the camera works and one, the mic doesn't. So it's a bit of a nightmare. So first of all, there's a couple of things that people have asked. So the first question they've asked is to do with the privacy issues relating to analytics. And I just wanted to have a conversation with you guys about the EU ruling that happened yesterday. So in the Europe, they've decided that analytics does go against GDPR because it tracks IP addresses. The UK is no longer in the EU, so they may not accept that. But have you got any opinions on the impact of that? Do you think that the UK will just ignore it, or do you think that maybe analytics will change what they track?
So I think the UK will be fine now that they've left the EU. It's similar. Something happened on LinkedIn last week where you're no longer allowed to do messaging ads to the EU, but they kind of said we're trying to make changes in order to get around it. And I'm sure there will be tracking, but maybe removing certain parts in the EU going forward. It's obviously not for everything that I've talked about in the presentation when it comes to getting the more accurate data so you can make the right decisions. It's obviously not ideal if you're advertising to the EU. But they always seem to find new ways of gaining data. It's the same with the Facebook privacy thing. At the beginning, it looked like it was going to be a shambles, but then they've managed to recover quite a lot of it.
So quite a lot of questions about that. So one of the issues with people saying they don't want to be tracked in Apple means that they actually get some really quite irrelevant ads. Do you want to explain why that works? What's the thing? What's the actual mechanism behind that, Emil?
Yeah, so essentially, if you don't have the tracking on, your user experience from an ad perspective is going to go down massively, because if you're not allowing the platforms to see any of your behaviors, then they're just going to start to do a lot more guesswork. So if they know a little bit about what you've been looking at, for example, I find it very useful. Sometimes I do it on purpose. I'll go on Facebook, say I want to buy a bike. I go on Facebook and I type in bike or bicycle, and I type in a load of terms and I just click on some stuff, because then I know over the next few days they're going to be able to identify I'm interested in it, and then they're going to target me based on it. But yeah, there's obviously a balancing act. You want your privacy, but you also want a good user experience. So in an ideal world, they'll find a point where you'll be able to maybe tell the platforms exactly what you would like them to be able to track, but not everything.
And this is going to get worse. It's not going to get any better, because once Google and Chrome, I mean, I know they've delayed their changes to their privacy policy, but we're going to start seeing different types of targeting as a result of this, which will be based more on the information that you hold yourself, the first party data, I guess. I've got a couple of questions about, we've got quite a lot of people that are real beginners and a lot of people that are quite advanced. So we've got quite a polarized group of people. This has attracted quite a mix of audiences. So the people that are beginners, can you just explain how, for example, if you were using Shopify, how you could use Shopify and use the tracking by linking them together? And then let's go back to the more advanced people where you might be using Google Tag Manager, and just explain the difference, please.
Yeah, so, well, even for the advanced people, I'd probably still recommend the integration. But essentially, say, for example, Shopify, they are one of the partners. And they've tried to make the process as simple as possible, Facebook and Shopify. And it works really well as long as everything's set up correctly outside the social media platform. Then we are talking about almost like a 10-click process, and it's set up. They walk you through it quite simply. You should probably have some kind of expert on hand in order to make sure that you don't make any obvious blunders, or have a developer. But say you're quite technical, then you should be able to do it yourself simply through following the steps through the partner integration.
Okay. I'm just going to bring up the notes on the offer, the two things I wanted to advertise, because we are losing quite a few people quite quickly, and I do, which happens at this time. So first of all, for the people that haven't already seen this, if you we are running our annual survey again. There is a prize draw for completing it. So please, could you click on the link, enter now, and then it takes about 5 minutes to complete it. And we will be offering a prize draw. So you can either have a day's worth of consultancy or training or mentoring, or there's £100 for yourself or to donate. So it would be very grateful for as many of you to complete this as possible, as that's incredibly useful for us to then, share how things have changed in the last year. Also, just going to the end of the presentation, next week, we've got a, I wasn't expecting to do this. So next week we've got our webinar is Jordan and Sarah. They're going to talk about tools for key phrase research and content ideation. So this is really how you can use key phrase research using some of the things like Google Ads tools and other tools, and then how you can come up with content ideas. So this is really for people that are doing content marketing and SEO. Also, before we leave, I have got another question I'm just going to ask. I'm going to ask Jordan. It would be great if any of you have enjoyed the presentation today. If you could leave a review for Emil, that would be amazing. So I'm just going to bring that one up as well. So if you want to click here and give Emil a review, that would be brilliant as well.
I just wanted to answer one more question that I saw in the Q&A. You've already answered it, but there's a chance that a lot of people didn't see it. Okay. So I've obviously, in this, we're talking about conversion. So it sounds like I've dismissed stats like impressions, but it all answered it in the Q&A there. But it's all about the types of objectives. If you're running an awareness ad, then impressions, they're very much important because impressions is essentially impressions and reach. Reach, if someone sees your ad, that counts as one person's reach. If that person sees it 3 times, then that counts as 3 impressions. So that's what an impression is, if you weren't too sure about that. So when you're running an awareness ad, it's all about getting the word out there. So you want to reach as many people as possible in your relevant audience. Then impressions is definitely a stat to optimize for. And what you would optimize for is a stat called CPM, which is cost per 1,000 impressions. And those kinds of ads you can run without the tracking. The problem is when you actually want to see the end results, that's when the tracking becomes a really important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another question by Zoe. Hopefully Zoe's still on the line. She'll probably pick this up later anyway. they're interested in knowing how you can use the data to build an audience, and in Facebook we call that a custom audience. So do you just want to explain how having a pixel on a website, and you say you want to find people that are like your converters, for example, or people have been to the website and haven't converted, how you would create an audience?
Yeah, so I'm guessing Zoe's talking about an audience such as like a website remarketing audience that you build through the tracking. So you need to have everything set up to start off with. From then, it's actually quite a simple task. You do create a custom audience, and essentially, say you wanted to just target people that visited your blog pages, then all you have to do is have URL contains and just have blog in there, for example, if that's the first part of your URL before the individual blogs. It's quite tricky to give you like a step-by-step guide without demonstrating it, but it's possibly something that we could include in one of the future webinars, or feel free to get in touch as well. It's something that, yeah, it's probably like a 15-30 minute training session, and you'll be able to do that. And then beyond that, we can then show you how to create a lookalike based on that audience as well.
I do think we've done some stuff on audiences before. I know I did a presentation last year, which was pretty detailed. It was probably too much for one presentation. So if you are interested in any of our previous webinars, if you go to annika.co.uk/resources-webinars and do a search, you should be able to find, you do a search on audiences or do a search on social media, you should be able to find the previous webinars that we've done on this. Earlier on, I also shared a link to Google Tag Manager, which is where a lot of is the methodology where you usually add your pixel. And I know that Ed did a demonstration. He did an actual walkthrough of how to do that. I think we've gone past 10 o'clock now. So normally what happens is that lots of people have got 10 o'clock meetings. So I'd like to thank Emil very much. It was a really interesting, I thought you explained it really, really well. A really good presentation. And I look forward to seeing everybody next Friday. So thanks a lot, guys. And we'll send out the video as soon as it's been processed, which is a couple of hours' time. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.